On Halloween night, 1974, 8-year-old Timothy O'Brien went trick-or-treating with his sister, Elizabeth, and 2 other children in Pasadena, accompanied by Timothy's father, Ronald, and another parent. The night started off innocently enough, but would go on to end in tragedy. When the group knocked on one particular door, there was seemingly no one home, and as such, they swiftly moved on. Timothy's father stayed behind for a moment to wait and see if anybody would answer the door. He quickly caught back up with the others, with 5 pixie sticks in his hand, given to him by the homeowner, who was simply taking their time to answer the door. He distributed the candy amongst the children, and later gave the spare one to a child who was not with the group. It began to rain, and as such, they cut their trick-or-treating session short, and the children and their parents went back to their homes. Before bed, Timothy asked his parents if he could dip into his candy collection. They agreed, and young Timothy decided to start with the pixie stick. He poured some of the powdery candy into his mouth, but immediately complained that it tasted unusually bitter. Timothy quickly realized that something was wrong, and he rushed to the bathroom with severe stomach pains. Shortly after, Timothy began to convulse, and within no time at all, went limp in his father's arms. He died as he was being rushed to the hospital. After a pathology report, it was revealed that the pixie sticks had been laced with a poison, a fatal dose of potassium cyanide, to be precise. Timothy consumed enough poison to have killed 2 adults. Thankfully, none of the other children in the group had eaten their pixie sticks, though theirs also tested positive for containing lethal amounts of cyanide. The tops of the candy wrappers had been opened, filled with poison, and resealed with a stapler. After the news of Timothy's death spread, there was community uproar, with parents from the surrounding area returning their children's Halloween candy to the police, fearing that a maniac had been handing out poison treats to as many trick-or-treaters as possible, with the sole intention of killing dozens of children. And that's exactly what was believed to have happened by the police, initially, at least. The authorities began to grow suspicious of Ronald, Timothy's own father, due to his inability to even recall which house handed out the pixie sticks, despite the fact that he and the children had only visited a handful of houses across 2 streets that evening. Even more strange was the fact that none of the houses that the group had visited that evening had been handing out pixie sticks to trick-or-treaters. Eventually, the truth came to light. Ronald had poisoned the candy himself, and ensured that it ended up being given to all of the children that he had taken out trick-or-treating. His motivation? To collect on various life insurance policies that he had taken out on his son, and presumably his daughter, though, as stated, she never ate her candy. He gave the other children the sweets in order to cover his tracks, and make it appear as if someone else was indiscriminately handing out the poisoned pixie sticks. Turns out that Ronald was over $100,000 in debt, and the life insurance payouts that he was set to receive would have eased his financial woes. Throughout his entire trial, Ronald maintained his innocence, but the amount of evidence pointing towards him as the murderer was too substantial for the jury to ignore. It was revealed that Ronald had been talking to chemists about where he could purchase cyanide and how much would be needed for a lethal dosage. His friends and co-workers also testified that Ronald showed an unusual interest in the poison in the months leading up to Halloween. He was found guilty of murder and 4 counts of attempted murder, and was sentenced to death. While incarcerated, he was despised by his fellow inmates, who condemned him for murdering his own son. Ronald's execution took place on March 31st, 1984. Just after midnight. A crowd of demonstrators gathered outside as he died, some even chanting, "Trick or treat." For his heinous crime, Ronald has become known as the man who killed Halloween.
The day was October 21st, just several days shy before Halloween. My anticipation grew higher and higher as I planned to host a Halloween party at my place. I remember setting up a Facebook event and inviting my close friends and coworkers to join the party. My friend Dave would usually be the one to host these kind of events, but unfortunately he couldn't do it this year as his parents were having renovations done at their house. While setting up the event, I didn't take into consideration that my parents were extremely against Halloween festivities. They would always lecture me on why Halloween was a holiday only made for kids who wanted to go to hell and worship the devil. What made things more frustrating was how they kept the same beliefs until now despite me being in my late teens. One night, I noticed my mom sitting in the living room watching TV. I began to approach her direction while trying to muster up any plausible excuse that would persuade her in the favor of my party idea. I casually hovered over her saying, "Hey Mom, just in case Dad didn't tell you today, I just wanted to say that you look very beautiful."
What the hell do you want, George?
What?
You're not usually this nice, so spit it out, whatever you have to say.
Can I invite my friends over for Halloween this year?
Get the hell out of my face!
I remember heading to my bedroom while pouting under my breath on how I was living such an unfair life. I sat in front of my computer and began sulking for the remainder of the night as I messaged the bad news to my friend Dave. As I embarrassingly addressed the issue, Dave responded back by suggesting that we purchase an Airbnb instead of hosting the party at someone's house. I thought it was a pretty smart idea, so we mutually agreed to get an Airbnb that was located somewhere more secluded and away from the suburban part of town. Feelings of excitement began exuberating throughout my body, as I couldn't help but feel exhilarated at the notion that I didn't have to deal with my parents' incompetence. Fast forward to October 31st and it was officially Halloween. I began driving towards the Airbnb destination about an hour or two after check-in, just so I could prep before the guests arrived. As I got closer to the destination, I remember seeing a decent-sized house that looked a tad run down. It didn't look like there were any other houses around, just a lot of tall trees and a scent of pine cones in the air. I figured it would add to the spooky ambiance considering this was Halloween. As I got inside, I immediately started setting up for the party while having a few glasses of alcohol on the side. A couple hours later, the sun was finally beginning to set, which meant that the guests were on their way to the party. I figured I'd dress as Georgie from the movie It, as my name was George, so pun intended. I texted and called my friend Dave, but unfortunately didn't get a response. I speculated that everyone was either unable to find the correct address or was just going to show up to this party fashionably late. That's when the living room TV begins to abruptly turn on. I then saw a bizarre message playing on the TV, as if it came straight out of the movie The Purge saying,
"This is not a test. This is your emergency broadcast system announcing the commencement of the annual purge sanctioned by the US government. Weapons of Class 4 and lower have been authorized for use during the purge. All other weapons are restricted. Government officials..."
What the hell is going on? I turn the TV off and immediately hear a knock coming from the front door. I opened the door and saw some kids shout, "Trick or treat!" Sorry guys, no candy here today. You suck, and wearing a raincoat isn't a costume, cheapskate. I'm dressed as Georgie, you idiot! I slammed the door shut and began to hammer down another drink. That's when I heard another knock at the door. Go away. Go away. Go away. Go away! I'm not handing out any candy, you stupid kids! I angrily approached the door and looked through the peephole, only to see a group of people wearing purge masks while holding machetes. At first glance, I thought it was the guests from the party, but then I heard one of the guys say, "Maybe we can go through the backyard and take him out there." My heart began to submerge into my stomach. I turned off all the house lights and simultaneously darted across the living room to make sure that the backyard sliding door was locked. As I secured the lock handle, one of the purgers slammed his hand on the glass door while yelling, "Open the door, Georgie! Leave me alone or I'm calling the cops!" That's when I grabbed a large blade from the knife set on the kitchen counter and ran towards the bedrooms. I then saw a red balloon hovering above the ground. I couldn't tell if I was hallucinating or not from the belligerent state that I was in. Nonetheless, I plowed through the hallway and locked myself in one of the bedrooms. As I glanced through the blinds of the bedroom window, I saw someone dressed as Pennywise dancing psychotically while staring in my direction. I heard nothing but the sound of my heart throbbing vigorously through my chest cavity. That's when I hear the closet door open behind me. I couldn't move a single muscle as I was honestly petrified to turn around. I then felt a soft tap on my shoulder with someone saying, "Hey, Georgie." "Ah! How the hell did you get in here?" "You want a balloon, Georgie?" "What?" "Here, take it. Take it." "Get away from me, clown!" "You'll float too. You'll float too. You'll float too. You'll float too!" That's when the clown's mouth abnormally opens wide and begins to swallow my entire head. I felt like my life was slowly diminishing. Through my drunken haze, I dug the kitchen blade into the stomach of the clown despite not being able to see a thing. I could feel the hand that was digging at the clown's stomach become wet from the blood being shed everywhere. I then opened my eyes and realized that the mouth that was supposedly swallowing my head was none other than a brown paper bag being held by my friend Dave. Happy Halloween! Ah!
They didn't believe me. They thought I'd snapped. They even found it funny. I bet they regret that now. We've all been given plenty of time to think about it. There was nothing in the air that night that suggested things would turn. It was a night of trick-or-treating just like any other. I had my two friends with me, Steve and Jim. We were rocking our usual low-effort costumes. But early on, we had the idea to split up and hit houses by ourselves, thinking we'd score pity points and more candy by being on our own. We ran off into separate directions and got to it. It was actually working pretty well. I was getting way more from each house than a kid my age would usually get, but I wasn't alone for long. I saw a random kid standing in the middle of the street, not moving, just staring up at a street lamp. He didn't even have a costume. "Hey kid," I called out to him, but he didn't move. So I walked up and clapped my hands on his shoulder. "Hey man." He didn't startle at all, just slowly craned back his neck and flashed me a very disarming smile. "Hey there, buddy. What are you doing on Halloween without a costume, boss?" He finally turned around and shrugged. "Ah, this is just how I roll every Halloween. Costumes aren't necessary if you've got charm." That innocent smile again. "Well, you're not going to get anything if you just stand out in the middle of the street." "Are you sure about that?" Yeah, pretty sure. Hey, you know what? We're both by ourselves, so why don't we hit some houses together?" "That sounds great, buddy. Let's go." "Hey, wait up. At least tell me your name first." "I'm Sean." He stopped for a moment and looked over his shoulder. "Nice to meet you, Sean. Call me Crane." "Sure thing, Crane." Then we were off. That Crane was a real interesting character. He taught me how to use his charm to get way more candy. "All you need is a genuine smile," he'd say. From that point on, I was raking in the goods like never before. But the strangest thing was, he never took any candy for himself. Nobody even offered any to him. And every time I tried to give him some of mine, he'd decline. "No thanks, Sean. I'm diabetic," he'd say. He was a cool guy for sure, but I was pretty confused as to what he was doing out on Halloween night if he was unable to eat candy as he claimed. But I wasn't going to ask. That seemed too judgmental. After a while, I decided to introduce Crane to my friends and see if they would welcome him into our group. I sent them a selfie of the two of us with the caption, "Met this cool guy Crane." I thought it was weird that they both screenshotted the picture. It wasn't funny or anything, but I just shrugged and took Crane to where my friend said to meet. When I got there, Jim and Steve were nowhere to be found. "Where are these friends of yours, Sean?" "I don't know. They should be around here somewhere. Maybe they're late." "Okay." Crane seemed a little concerned, so I tried to cheer him up. I clapped him on the shoulder again and gave him a reassuring shake. "Don't worry, man. These guys are really cool. They'll like you. We'll all get along really well. Hey, while we're waiting, try and think of some cool things to tell them about yourself, you know?" "Sure thing, buddy." Then, Jim and Steve ran out from the bushes, bursting with laughter, waving their phones around. "What's wrong with you, Sean?" "Dude, have you gone psycho?" They didn't even notice Crane. He was starting to look upset. "What are you guys talking about? Aren't you going to introduce yourselves?" That threw them off balance with laughter. "Oh man, you really are crazy. Dude, we caught you in 4K talking to yourself. I posted it to Snap, bro." Crane was just standing there. It started to freak me out just a bit, so I went on my phone and looked at Jim's story. There I was in the middle of the street, talking loudly to nobody, my hand on the shoulder of thin air, looking like a totally insane person. What? I don't understand. Crane? When I looked up, my friends could finally see it, but it wasn't Crane anymore.